Hello, and welcome back to the Reactivist Podcast. I'm Marlena Shivo. Today, I am thrilled to welcome my very first guest. He is a longtime friend and colleague and the host of The Other Side of Midnight on 77 WABC Radio in New York, Frank Morano. Welcome, Frank.
Hello, Marlena. It's great to be here. I've really become I've always been a fan of yours, but I'm become a great fan of The Reactivist. I enjoy your commentaries a great deal. I find them not only quite insightful, but pretty amusing. So it's great to finally be here.
Well, it's great to have you. Okay, so we did radio last week together. You threw out the number 6 years ago that we started doing radio, but actually, Frank, we started doing it in 2013.
Wow.
Yeah.
How is it that I have so much gray hair in that time and you don't have any?
Someone is making a lot of money off of keeping my hair the color that it is.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So let's start with the Trump trial, the hush money trial that's currently going on. So opening statements for today, but neither one of us really knows what was said so far. But over the weekend, most of the coverage was about whether or not Donald Trump was going to take the stand in this trial. Most lawyers will say don't take the stand because you could perjure yourself, and Lord knows Donald Trump would be an ace in the hole for perjuring himself. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on whether or not his lawyers will let him take the stand?
You know, there's a couple interesting layers to that question. First, let's start with the fact that we're not able to, unlike almost every other state, we're not able to watch this trial. Now, here you have the historic first ever felony trial of a former president who also happens to be a major party presidential candidate. And whether you love Trump or whether you hate Trump, people are very interested in this trial, and yet we can't watch it, even though this is a public proceeding. New York is way behind the times. I mean, your former network, Court TV, built a whole day's worth of programming every single day out of covering trials. And yet here's what may be the trial of the 21st century, at least one of the 4 Trump trials of the 21st century. And we can't even see it. I think it's crazy. And I hope the judge decides to release a daily transcript of the trial online. So at the very least, we can read it to see what's going on. But I hope New York changes that law. But as far as, whenever you get into the business of predicting what Donald Trump is going to do, it's such a crapshoot because you just have no idea what Donald Trump is going to do. I don't know that Donald Trump has any idea what he's going to do. I think he definitely wants to testify and tell his story. And one of the things that I've heard from a lot of lawyers who have been solicited by Trump and have declined to work with him is that they don't want to work with him or they don't want to represent him because they're afraid that he doesn't listen to them. So I'm not sure how much his own lawyers will be able to influence his decision. I definitely think his lawyers are strongly urging him not to testify, not only because of the perjury trap you alluded to, but because of the fact that he then would open himself up to cross-examination, and they could bring up a lot of things that might not play well for the jury and a lot of things that may hinder him in a presidential campaign that he doesn't necessarily want to bring out there once more. So if you're putting a gun to my head, at the end of the day, I definitely think that he probably won't testify. But again, that's with the asterisk that you can't predict anything Donald Trump does. He's totally unpredictable.
Absolutely. And to your point, I don't know if you caught the interview on Sunday on Meet the Press. There was an exclusive interview with Zelensky, and Kristen Welker asked him if what he thought of Donald Trump claiming that he could end the war between, Ukraine and Russia. And he basically said what you're saying, but more so about Putin, where Putin says a bunch of stuff, but you can't necessarily trust what he says. So same with Donald Trump. They're almost like the same person.
Well, yeah, I would agree that they're unpredictable. I would think there's a pretty wide gap between the authoritarianism of Putin and where Donald Trump is. He may wish he had some of Putin's ability to rule in an unhindered way and throw some of his critics in prison. But I think Trump is even on his worst day a long way from where Putin is on his best.
Do you think they are on the same level when it comes to being diabolical?
I don't. One, I think Putin tends to be maybe a little bit of a longer term strategic thinker, whereas I get the sense with Trump that it's a lot more about the short term, today, tomorrow, next month, next year. Whereas with Putin, I get the impression that it's more of a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year thing down the line. No, and I also, I realize the Ukraine war is a little bit of a nuanced story, but I have a tough time seeing, even with some provocation, President Trump invading Mexico or Canada. So just with taking neighboring and invading country off the table, I think reduces your level of diabolicity. I mean, do you think, it sounds like you may think they're...
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think they're the same person. I think people want to think that they are the same person. Just given the American culture in general, we have a democracy here. So I just think that we as Americans are conditioned differently than Russians in general. And so I just don't even think it's in our arsenal to be as diabolical. But just to put a pin in that in terms of Ukraine, because I really don't want to get into all of that. But I am talking this week about how the $61 billion was approved by Mike Johnson and it's going to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about the fact that the foreign aid was approved and is going to go through? And B, do you think it's going to make a difference and bring this conflict closer to an end?
No, my answer to the latter part of your question is absolutely not. I don't know. First of all, I feel terrible for anybody that's, especially innocent people, that's being subjected to this kind of war, which they didn't ask for. It's something that leaders, which they probably had minimal say in selecting, made the decision to engage in. And especially, I was reading last week the story in the Times about these people in Ukraine. They're lowering the draft age in Ukraine, and a lot of men don't want to be cannon fodder on the front lines, and who can blame them for this war that they don't want, they didn't ask for, and they're actually running away and fleeing, and in some cases risking their lives to run away. I mean, I think in a lot of ways that really creates the starkest difference between Ukraine and the United States. In the United States, people are risking their lives to get here. In Ukraine, and I'm sure this is true in Russia to some extent as well, they're risking their lives to get out, to avoid going to this war. So I don't see what this $61 billion would buy the Ukrainians that the last $100 billion didn't buy them, and the $100 billion before that. I think it's poor policy from America's point of view, but I also think it doesn't necessarily do anything to help the average rank and file Ukrainian. I wish that the United States would, and the West in general, would play more of a role in trying to effect a peaceful settlement. So for all those reasons, I think it was a mistake as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so back to Trump then, since he thinks he has the power to make this war end, do you think he has the ability to do so?
You know, it's such a great question, and it comes once again to that question of unpredictability. One of the things that I really liked about Trump is that because he didn't come from a political background, is that he was willing to do things that no other politician would ever do. He was willing to call the president of Taiwan and congratulate him on his election, even though he's looking at memo after memo that says in big, bold letters saying, "Do not congratulate," and he congratulated him anyway. He had a summit with the dictator of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, which every foreign policy expert in the world, left and right, told him, don't do that, don't do that, don't give credibility to the Hermit Kingdom. And I think if you look at the number of nuclear tests and the number of hydrogen tests that were taking place before that summit and then after that summit, I think, Trump was right. And I think his instincts were better than where the experts were. But that being said, he also loaded his administration with all sorts of people that were the biggest neocons on foreign policy that would absolutely be continuing this Biden policy. Folks like John Bolton, General Mattis, General Kelly. So you just never know with Trump. That's the thing, is you could see the decent personal relationship that he has with Putin, which I think most people would acknowledge he's got a much better relationship with Putin than President Biden does, paying dividends and maybe getting him to a place where Putin's willing to negotiate an end to this. And I think you could also see some antipathy towards Zelensky for a whole host of reasons. So I don't know. Is the best answer. I just think you never know with Trump.
No, you don't. I do want to say this, even though it's kind of been talked about a lot, but I'd be curious to hear if you think that they were able to get a jury that could be unbiased. Now, obviously, you don't have a crystal ball and you don't have, insight into the minds of these people, but there's not one person, I would argue, in this, not only in this country, I would say in this world, that doesn't have an opinion on Donald Trump.
I honestly think the answer is yes. While Donald Trump is a polarizing figure that is universally known and everybody probably has an opinion on Trump, I do think it's possible. I can't speak to these 12 jurors and five or six alternates in this case, but I do think it's possible to have an opinion about Trump as a person and as a political figure and not necessarily have it affect your opinion of his guilt or innocence in this case. I mean, you have opinions about Trump, very strong opinions that you've expressed not only here, but, on the radio. I honestly think you could evaluate the facts in this case very objectively. And I think you can not like Trump. You, Marlena Schreiber, could not like Trump and still make the decision to come to the conclusion that, all right, well, this was not a crime. So I do think it's possible, but I think it's difficult, especially in a place like Manhattan. But I have to think that, it's such a novel legal theory. And it kind of like with Bill Clinton, where he was caught lying about sex, which I think most people can relate to the personal embarrassment of dealing with a relationship and not wanting it to besmirch your reputation or hurt your relationship at home. Whereas most people can't understand what it's like to deal with classified documents and treat them in a haphazard manner when they have national security implications. I think because of that, it's going to be very difficult, even in Manhattan, to get a conviction in this case, because I have to think there's going to be at least one juror that refuses to convict. So I would actually guess that, at least for the trial portion of this, that a hung jury in a mistrial is the most likely outcome. And if there is a conviction, because I've never seen a state case prosecute a federal crime in this manner before, I think there's a very good chance it could actually be overturned on appeal.
But also the one other factor about jurors that sticks out in my mind, just from my court TV days and covering the Michael Jackson trial and covering the Casey Anthony trial, the jurors were subject to so much scrutiny, right? Because people couldn't believe that Casey Anthony, was found not guilty, right? They just couldn't believe it. And the jurors themselves, who did media interviews after that, did feel pressure within the chamber to sort of just get it over with at a certain point. And then in the Michael Jackson trial, it was sort of the same thing, right? Like it's not just about the fact that you may or may not have an opinion about this person. Can you be biased unbiased? But it also comes down to the conversations that go on in that room and how strong or weak you are in standing your ground on what you truly believe. And that could go a million different ways. So you're probably right. It probably might be a hung jury. I think it's a waste of time, to be honest.
But also in a place like Manhattan, where if you choke your stepson, they don't even want to charge you with a felony. In a place like Manhattan, where if you do get charged with a crime, the length of time between the time you're arrested and the time you go to trial is in some cases literally years. Yet this is the priority of the Manhattan DA, is putting Trump on trial and making sure we get him on trial right before that election. I mean, it seems to me that this is clearly an instance where Trump is being treated much worse than the average defendant would be, at least in this Manhattan trial. I'm not speaking to the federal cases at all, but just in this Manhattan case. So we'll see where it goes. And ironically, this has actually helped to be a tremendous shot in the arm to Trump's fundraising. Every day that he's on trial, they're raising a ton of money from donors that think this is improper. So I think this is totally counterproductive for any of what Alvin Bragg was hoping to do. We'll see. Right.
I mean, it is corrupt. It's completely corrupt. That I feel like that's not even debatable. Okay, moving on. So something a little bit lighter. On your show, you do a trivia, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like 10 questions, and I forget what's the length of time they have to answer
60
the question.
seconds.
60 seconds, 10 questions. If they get all of them right, they win, $1,000, or they used to at least. Well, how many people actually have won?
Either 3 or 4.
In the course of how long were you doing it?
Over about 2.5 years.
Okay, so you know that I've always tried to play along when I'm on the show, and I fail. I don't want to say miserably, but some people might describe it as me failing miserably. Right. And you start off easy, and then you sort of, go into the harder questions. Now, I don't have 10 questions for you.
Okay.
But with so much talk about Trump, it made me think about George W. Bush. Okay. Because when Trump was in office, people were romanticizing GW. When GW was in office,
right, he was Hitler.
They loathed him, right? Yeah. I mean, he was just like a rock star all of a sudden. This is your wheelhouse. So I want to see how much you know about George W. Bush. And I'll start off easy. Okay.
Gotcha. And is there a prize? Do I get a prize?
You get a drink.
All right. Okay.
But you have to have the drink with me.
Even
better.
I
will pay for the drink.
Okay. Got it.
And we're going to bring back Frank and Stein now that I have the Reactivist.
Got it.
We couldn't get that together for today, but we're going to do that. So the easy question, first question, what does the W stand for?
Walker.
Correct. Ding, ding. In 2000, during the election, how long did the recount last?
36 days.
36 days. Look at you. Okay. What state was President Bush reading a story to elementary school kids when he heard about the Twin Towers being attacked?
Florida, My Pet Goat.
My Pet Goat. You know the book. You don't get bonus points.
Okay. All right. Fine.
I didn't account for bonus points.
Okay. Fair enough.
Do you know the name of the? Wait. Do you know the name of the elementary school?
I don't. No.
Oh, I should have put that on here. I was about to put that on here, and I didn't.
See, if I was incentivized with a few bonus points, maybe I would. But now I can't.
Okay, bombs over Baghdad, right? Very early on in that conflict, George Bush landed on a vessel, and he proclaimed mission accomplished. Can you tell me the name of the vessel?
I am drawing a blank here. This was one of the things that I fear I might have forgotten.
This is
I don't. I'm going to get. I don't know it. I'm going to say the Enterprise.
Oh, this is heaven. It was the USS Abraham Lincoln.
See, as soon as you said it, it came back to me. I did not know that. Did not remember it.
But I'm going to ask you a few more questions. Although there were some other Bush questions in there, I was hoping you would get to them.
Well, let me hear the other Bushes.
Fine. He appointed 2 Supreme Court justices during his presidency. Do you know who they are?
Roberts and Alito.
Correct. Now, I'll give you this as a bonus.
Okay.
When Alito, now Roberts had to replace Rehnquist, and then there was an opening because Sandra Day O'Connor was leaving, right? So then Alito came along, but before Alito, he nominated a female. Do you know her name?
Harriet Miers.
Oh, you're the worst. I mean, you're great.
Okay. And now I'm disappointed I didn't get Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, and then just one sort of like general question as an American, and then we're going to move on to another line of questioning. What American doctrine opens with, when in the course of human events?
The Declaration of Independence.
There you go. All right, good. All right, so you passed with flying-ish colors.
Flying, but not onto an aircraft carrier colors. Okay.
So, on your show, you always do Ask Frank anything.
Right.
And I feel like I never ask you anything ever, whether I'm there or not. I never give you a question. So now I have
Oh, boy.
an inside the actor studio style line of questioning for you.
Okay.
If you had to describe your personality with just one word, what would that word be?
I would say eccentric.
Okay. If you were to write an autobiography, what would the title be?
Um,
I'm sort of surprised you haven't thought of this.
I have thought about it. I'm just trying to narrow it down.
You have several.
Yeah, I'm going to say Memoirs of a Martian Madman, the mostly true stories of talking with the greats, the near greats, the ingrates, the has-beens, and the never-weres.
Can that fit on a book cover?
I don't know, but it's worth it. It would be, Memoirs of a Martian Madman, the mostly true stories of interactions with the greats, near greats, ingrates, has-beens, and never-weres. That would be in smaller print. How do you not buy a book with that title? Who even cares what it says? You got to just buy it. It's a great title.
Well, since we've been doing radio together for the better part of 11 years, which category am I? Am I the great, the near great? Am I an ingrate? Or I don't even know what else you said.
The has-beens and the never-weres. In my book, you're one of the great ones. You know what a fan I am of yours and always have been. So in my book, you're one of the great ones, but I'll leave that to the audience to decide.
but not your Facebook audience.
Hey, they're rough on me. You got to see the things they say about me. No one's safe from that group. They're a very, very rough group. By the way, if people want to know what we're talking about, you can join our Facebook group. Just go on Facebook and search Morano Radio Fans and Haters. But it's not for the faint of heart. You need a strong stomach for that Facebook group.
You also need a day because there's a lot of people with a lot of time on their hands.
That's true.
So, and possibly an Urban Dictionary. Okay. If you could scream one phrase at the top of your lungs, what would that phrase be?
In general or at this very moment?
In general.
Scream one.
You have to pick one phrase that you could scream into a megaphone.
Oh, I'd have to say the phrase that I ebulliently utter every hour, good morrow.
Oh, well, you kind of already screamed that.
I know, but I would scream it louder.
How much would it take for you, Frank, to dress in drag and do a drag queen story hour? How much would you have to be paid? And then my second question or my follow-up to that is, what would your drag name be?
So I think I would need to be paid around $3,500.
Okay, you'll explain that in a second.
Is that more or less than you expected?
Less, and it's a random amount of money. Do you have to pay off a bill right now that's $3,500? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I have several, but no, I think that's a reasonable amount of money that I could see you being willing to pay. But it also makes it worth my time and whatever embarrassment that I would experience. That I could deal with $3,500 worth of time and embarrassment. I think that my drag queen name would be Frankie. Frankie is, I think, an appropriately androgynous name. There's a lot of great female Frankies over there, and I think it's a nice homage to my actual identity as a male. So I would go with simply Frankie.
Okay. Well, there you go. I'll tell you right now, though, if I ever win trivia on your show, I get to dress you in drag, head to toe.
You're on.
So this is interesting. This is more of a conversational question.
Okay.
I did the story I don't even know, maybe a month ago about in Illinois how there were guidelines in the state of Illinois. There are guidelines for burying your loved one on your property. Okay, and I was kind of stuck couldn't get past sort of that concept, right? Like, I don't even want to know what the guidelines are. I'm assuming it has to do with property lines and depth and the size of your property and everything else. My question was two things. Would you want to bury a loved one on your property if you were able to? The caveat being, now you have to suspend whatever you believe or don't believe.
Okay.
If ghosts are real and you could be visited by this loved one, would that be a reason not to bury the loved one? Or would it be the reason to bury the loved one?
Under your scenario, does burial on the property increase the likelihood of a haunting?
No, if it guarantees, we're saying it guarantees a haunting from the loved one.
Okay, gotcha. So if if my mom, God forbid, is buried here, then I'm seeing my mom in ghost form regularly.
Ghost form, whatever that looks like.
Gotcha. All right. So let me begin with the first part of that question. One of the things that I think is interesting is New York, and I don't think New Jersey is here yet, but New York recently legalized human composting. So they will allow you to turn your human remains into compost. So I was talking with my wife recently about this, and she's indicated that she would like to donate everything that can possibly be donated, eyes, skin, every organ that can be, and then what's left be turned into compost and then made into a tree that we would plant in the backyard. And then if I end up moving someplace, that we would transport that tree. Although most odds makers have me predeceasing her in most actuarial tables.
Quite possibly at the hands of her, but go ahead.
Exactly. But so as far as burial goes, I would say yes, I would like to bury a loved one on our property, even though we don't have that large of a backyard. So I think it would take up some of the prime backyard real estate, but I think it would be nice. I really don't visit cemeteries often. I'm always saying it's something that I want to do a little bit more of, but I just never seem to do it. And I think at the very least that seeing that person's headstone or whatever arrangement you've made in your house, it causes you to make sure you think about that person and hopefully on a lot of nice memories that you have.
So
and
a framed photo wouldn't do the trick.
What? A what photo?
A framed photo of the person wouldn't do the trick.
I guess it would. I guess it would. It's true. But what
happens when you move, Frank? Do you then have to dig up this body and transport?
That's why Rachel's idea about the tree, which Shatner told me he wants to do as well. He wants to be a tree. So their idea about the tree is such a good one because you can move the tree. It's tough to dig up a body and move it to another house. I don't know how you explain that to the people that are buying your house. But as far as the haunting goes, as long as the person that I'm being haunted by doesn't suddenly become malevolent, like a Pet Cemetery style, as long as they remain the similar personality that they were when they were alive, I would not just be okay with, but welcome any haunting. For instance, I'd love to see a dead Marlena,
I think a lot of people feel that way sometimes. All right. Well, that just about does it. Thanks for being here, Frank.
Thank you for having me, Marlena. If anybody wants to check out the podcast, they can go to fmwabc.com, and you can often hear the musings, the wit and wisdom of Marlena Shivo. It's great to be here on The Reactivist. I am a big fan, and I hope you'll have me back.
I definitely will. And just so I heard you correctly, I'm one of the greats. So are you saying so does that mean you put me in the same category as your idol, best friend, and possibly secret lover, William Shatner?
Absolutely not. Shatner is sui generis. This is a book that was written by Shatner in, I believe, this is 1979 or 1980. And this man has lived 5 lifetimes worth of adventures since then. It's a very rare book, by the way. It's called Shatner, Where No Man, the authorized biography of William Shatner. No one's in Shatner's category, unfortunately. Not even you. I mean, this is look at this. This is a man who has the kind of stories that I couldn't even begin to make up.
Well, you've broken my heart, Frank, but somehow I think I will live on.
And live long and prosper, I have no doubt.
Live on, I said.
And live long.
All right, Frank. Well, thanks for being here. This was fun. And
Thank
I will
you,
definitely
Marlena.
have you back.
I'll see you on the radio.
Election season heats up.
Wonderful.
And I guess
I'll
I'll
look forward to it.
see you on the other side of midnight.
I'll look forward to that. Take care.